I held him within 5 minutes of him being born.
Are you surprised by the love you feel for baby Eric?
I actually said to Lauren beforehand, what if I liked the dogs more than him?
He was the toughest nut to crack and not so easily impressed. A single yes or no from him decided your fate, but the most feared Simon Cowell has been fated with a struggle too big for him. Recently, the buzz around town is that his son has been diagnosed with something tragic. For the first time, it seems Simon is the one saying goodbye, and this time it is painfully real. What's really going on with Simon Cowell? For a long time, Simon Cowell wasn't just a judge on television shows, he was a force of nature. From American Idol to Britain's Got Talent, Simon built his name on being blunt, controversial, and unapologetic. With a single sentence, he could make or break a career, and viewers loved him for it. People tuned in expecting the arched eyebrow, the blunt remarks, and that unwavering confidence. He was television's gatekeeper, and he wore that title like it was made just for him. But lately, there's been a subtle shift in Simon, and it has not gone unnoticed. More and more people are beginning to sense that something about him just is not the same. He still gives his familiar little smile like he used to, but something about his smile and energy doesn't sit well with longtime fans. It didn't stop there. He's no longer as sarcastic as he used to be, and fans have noticed this change is not just in what he says, it's also reflected in how he acts now. These days Simon chooses his words more carefully, and every time a child steps on stage, something in him seems to light up. One moment that fans remembered vividly happened during a performance on America's Got Talent. Michael Ketterer, a father of 6, sang a very emotional tribute to his children, and something about the moment stirred some emotions up in Simon. It was not just the song that moved Simon, it was Michael's love for his children, many of whom he adopted from foster care. For Simon, who became a father later in life, the performance seemed to reach a personal place, and that came through clearly in how Simon responded. At first, many assumed his change was due to stress or simple exhaustion. After decades in the spotlight, it would be natural for Simon to slow down. But this feels like more than fatigue. Over the past year, he has appeared in fewer interviews and skipped more red carpets than usual. And when questions come up about his family, especially his son Eric, Simon tends to steer the conversation elsewhere. And that silence hasn't gone unnoticed. It is this silence that has sparked countless conversations. Some fans think his engagement to Lauren brought out a softer side. Others wonder if he's still recovering, maybe from health scares or his recent cosmetic procedures. But the theory that keeps popping up, the one people keep circling back to in online threads and late-night fan gossip, hits a little closer to the heart. Many believe that Simon's change has everything to do with fatherhood. Not because something is necessarily wrong, but because being a father may be shaping his life more than anyone realizes. In past interviews, Simon often spoke about Eric with pride, describing how fatherhood transformed him, especially after the loss of his own parents. Photos of the two smiling backstage were once the highlight of his public image. But lately, that warmth has grown quiet. There are no recent updates, no playful anecdotes, no candid father-son moments shared with the world. Instead, there has been a slow pull away from the spotlight. And in today's world that people are very active online, people notice even the slightest change. Lately, it seems Simon has taken his eyes off face and has switched that attention to family. It's even more obvious when his son's name, Eric, is mentioned. There is this unmistakable but strange glint in his eyes. According to razor-sharp-eyed observers, this points that things may not entirely be right. We may not know entirely what's going with him behind the scenes, but it seems more shocking than we can imagine. But to understand the silent transformation we're seeing now, we have to go back. Before the fame, before the spotlight, who was Simon Cowell, and what shaped the man we admire today? Before the fame, Simon Cowell's early years. Simon Philip Cowell was born on October 7th, early years 1959, in Lambeth, London. His parents had an early and strong influence in his choice of career later on in life, as they were heavily involved in the entertainment industry. The Cowells lived comfortably and placed a high value on appearances. But even with that privilege, young Simon often felt more pressure than freedom, especially growing up with his father's other children from past relationships. Simon struggled all through school. After attending Radlett Preparatory School, he spent a year at licensed Villers School in Ascot, then moved on to boarding at Dover College. There, he passed his GCE O-levels in English language and literature but was expelled around the age of 16, and you won't believe why. According to reports, Simon got in trouble for painting the walls of his dorm room and setting off a prank that tampered with the school's security system. The staff saw it as unacceptable behavior. But for Simon, it was less about breaking rules and more about expressing frustration. In his mind, it was just one more reminder that he did not fit into their world, and maybe never would. He later enrolled at Windsor Technical College, where he took another GCE, this time in sociology. But Simon had already lost interest in school and no longer saw the point. He didn't care for rules or authority figures who didn't understand him. He wasn't interested in fitting into a system that didn't fit him. At this point, he made a decision which, well, given his history, wasn't surprising. He left Windsor College. Simon found himself hopping between jobs, still figuring out where he truly belonged. He worked as a runner on Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, spent time in an estate agency, and with the help of his father he later landed in the mailroom, an electric and musical industry popularly known as EMI. None of these roles were glamorous. But they gave Simon something even more important, a front-row seat to the music industry. He saw how the music business really worked. He learned how people made deals, how artists were shaped for success, and most importantly, how to listen before speaking. By the early 1980s, Simon had started building his career in music. After gaining experience at EMI, he took a leap and co-founded E&S Music. Soon after, he partnered with Ian Burton to launch Fanfare Records. The label found success with catchy pop hits like Sonita's So Macho and Robson and Jerome's version of Unchained Melody. For a while, it seemed like Simon had finally found his footing. But in 1989, everything came crashing down. Fanfare folded, and Simon lost nearly everything. He had to move back in with his parents, a step backward that could have crushed many. But he never spoke about it publicly. But rather, he slowly picked up the broken pieces, but with an even stronger resolve to fight for the life he thought he deserved. Even back then, Simon was already learning how to manage his own story. Whether it was being expelled from school or watching a company fail, he responded the same way. He stayed calm, quiet, and focused. He rarely showed emotion. He avoided sympathy. In February 2014, something changed in Simon Cowell's world. While many were out celebrating Valentine's Day with flowers and dinner reservations, Simon spent his time in a hospital room at Lenox Hill in New York. That morning, he became a father. His son, Eric, was born without the media frenzy that usually followed anything tied to Simon's name. Just a few hours before the birth, Simon had been filming Britain's Got Talent in London. But the moment Lauren Silverman called, he got on a plane and made it just in time. Eric was born to Simon and his now fiancée, Lauren, whom he began dating around 2013. At the time, their relationship made headlines, not only because Simon was famously private, but because Lauren was still married when the news broke. It sparked a lot of drama on social media, the kind that usually follows celebrity scandal. But inside that hospital room, none of it mattered. There were no flashing cameras or reporters. Just Simon, Lauren, and their newborn son. Later, in an interview with Extra, Simon said something few expected from the famously sharp judge: "I was born to be a dad." And for a man who never wanted children to begin with, that kind of vulnerable joy was new. The moment wasn't just life-changing, it was grounding. For the first time in a long while, Simon Cowell wasn't thinking about ratings or headlines. He was just a man holding his son. He named his son after his own father, Eric Cowell Sr., a man Simon admired deeply but rarely spoke about in public. It was more than just a name. It felt like a quiet bridge between generations, a way to show love and honor without needing to explain it. Over time, people began to notice a different side of Simon. In interviews, he spoke more openly, saying that becoming a father gave his life a new sense of purpose and meaning, something he had never expected to experience. Here's where things begin to get interesting. For years, Simon helped young talents step into the spotlight. But when it came to his son, he made a very different choice. There were no reality show appearances or magazine photo shoots. He kept Eric out of the spotlight, away from the media chaos. It was a decision that felt very different from the public life Simon was known for. Still, now and then, we caught glimpses. Eric holding his father's hand at a fundraiser. Sitting backstage during a show. Smiling in the audience beside his dad. And in those rare moments, it was clear. Simon was not just showing up, he was gentle, present, and proud. But there was also a sense that he was being careful, as if he was protecting something precious. Something he wanted to grow far from flashing lights. Slowly, people began to see less of Eric, and his absence didn't go unnoticed. This led to speculations, and questions began to swirl. Was Simon simply being protective, or was there something else happening behind the scenes? He never shared too much, and that careful approach got people wondering. Could Eric be facing something personal? Something that made Simon want to shield him from the spotlight? A few fans even floated the idea that Eric might be navigating developmental challenges, maybe even autism. But nothing was ever confirmed, and Simon has never spoken directly about it. People could not help but notice and talk about the changes. Some even go as far as dropping comments asking about Eric's whereabouts under nearly every photo Simon posts on social media. They also picked up on the way he talks about his son with so much love, but always in a protective way. He never shared too much, and that thoughtful approach got people wondering. Could Eric be facing something personal? Something that made Simon want to shield him from the spotlight? A few fans even circulated the idea that Eric might be navigating developmental challenges, maybe even autism. But nothing was ever confirmed, and Simon has never spoken directly about it. What stood out most was not the rumors, but how Simon carried himself. Every time he spoke about Eric, his words were soft, thoughtful, and filled with care. It did not stop there. People grew even more curious when, years later, Simon began stepping back from certain projects. He stopped talking so much about ratings or new television deals. Instead, his focus quietly shifted. He started spending more time at home, choosing to be more present in Eric's life. In 2021, during a rare interview, someone asked him what kind of legacy he wanted to leave behind. He did not mention fame, success, or the shows that made him a household name. Instead, he said something simple: he just wanted Eric to be proud of him. That was not a celebrity talking. That was a father, speaking from the heart. And in that moment, people saw just how much Simon had changed. He was no longer chasing the next big moment. He was trying to become someone his son would admire, the quiet exit. When fame no longer fit at first, people thought Simon Cowell was the quiet exit, just slowing down. After years of nonstop work, long hours, and global success, it seemed normal. By his early 60s, the tough TV mogul was choosing a calmer life. He chose a calmer life because he wanted to. Fame just did not hold the same thrill anymore. What mattered most now was something closer to home, his son, Eric. However, the change did not happen overnight. In 2020, Simon had an accident at his Malibu home that left him with a serious back injury and forced him to rest for months. For the first time in years, he stepped away from his demanding schedule and found himself in a rare moment of calm. With work on hold and no pressure from the media, he finally had space to think about what mattered most. Simon had long said that becoming a father gave his life new meaning and that Eric helped him find peace after losing both his parents. Still, it was the accident that truly made him slow down. In the months that followed, he reduced his professional commitments and began taking Fridays off just to be with his son. Here's the truth: Simon never resigned or officially left the entertainment industry. He simply began choosing home over headlines. Fans started to notice. His television appearances became less frequent, and when he did show up, he seemed more relaxed and more grounded. He was no longer chasing the spotlight, he just wanted to be a good and present father. The change in Simon's life is what started to stir some of the speculation. Online, people began to wonder if there was more to his absence. But no confirmation ever came, and maybe that silence says enough. The truth is, Simon